Yes, and it's interesting because in my experience, and I'm a early childhood teacher, and my experience with children is that the children that I taught tended to want to write cursive before they were really developmentally ready. So that was one of the cases. And then, in terms of encouraging that, a lot of that is on us as teachers to celebrate when they've done well, and to show them how they can improve. Some students, their handwriting is never going to be award-winning, to use a term. However, it is as long as it's legible and they can use it with ease. I usually coach children to consider their audience, the fact that they need to be able to read it, and that it represents, as we've heard before, it represents us. It represents me when I'm not there, that handwriting. But in terms of being able to do keyboarding, and I've had students tell me that keyboarding is going to be the way they go because they're not going to have a job that requires that they do anything by hand. However, having now had an administrative assistant for the last 5 years who's had to make sure that she reads my writing, I do know that there is an impact. I mean, because not every note that I make is done on a keyboard, and not everything I do, I can't get my laptop to work everywhere, or my texting to work. And I just think that some of that is just telling them it's another tool for you to be successful, and it's here to help you. You will get out of it what you put into it. Thank you.
Representative Bateman. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple more questions. Just in kind of a response to Janie's comments, I know as a teacher, I used to have a letter writing contest. I have a question, by the way, but I just wanted I had a letter writing contest. I taught juniors in high school, and they had to use an elegant writing instrument. They couldn't use a ballpoint pen. I mean, a ballpoint pen is tacky, really, when you're going to write a letter. Don't use a ballpoint pen. Get some elegant, a lot of the kids found fountain pens. Somewhere or another they found them, and a rolling writer, a nice rolling writer. And I said, get some elegant stationery, no, just lined paper, get some elegant stationery. And those kids got so excited with this letter writing contest. I couldn't believe the beautiful letters they wrote, and I plastered them all over the wall in my room, And it was judged 50% on appearance and 50% on content. And then I gave a prize, an elaborate certificate written in cursive, just with a gold seal on it and everything. Those kids were so excited about that. But the question I have is, what are we finding in software that I've heard all about these tablets, and we combining the two? Can you describe what's happening in the world of computers to actually accommodate cursive handwriters?
Definitely. And before I tell you what is happening in software, I also want to say, one of the things that we've done over the last 22 years is to have a handwriting contest, a national handwriting contest. And you would think that that would not be something that children all the way up through 8th grade would really be excited about. But our entries have gone up considerably every year. We're at 325,000 entries this past year. And that's grades 1 through 8. And this current year, because that falls under my department too, I got a really nice letter. It was a petition from a kindergarten class saying to me, you know what? Why isn't kindergarten included? Please include us. So we've included kindergarten. We also added, 2 years ago, we added a category for children with special needs because we had a young man who entered. He had he was born with a birth defect where he had no hands or arms below his elbow, but he entered our 5th grade cursive writing contest because writing was his passion. So there are those kind of stories out there too about writing, and kids really do seem to get into it. But to your question about the software, one of the things that we find is that because many of our teacher certification courses are not teaching handwriting any longer, it hasn't been a demand, we do have a younger population of teachers coming in without that understanding or confidence or ability to teach cursive or to teach manuscript for that matter. So companies have developed, and we have developed a program that actually shows the letters being made on a screen, and it gets the children up on an interactive whiteboard or on a tablet, practicing the letters, using a stylus, using a smart board, whatever the tools are that they have. which what that does is it helps them learn the pattern that the letters are made out of and the lines that they're made of. So the software is progressing with that, and we're seeing that there is a lot of handwriting recognition software out there that is being created to address the fact that people are still writing by hand and they're doing it on tablets.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
One final question. There are those, of course, one of the important reasons that we believe that cursive should be retained is that if people can't read it, then they won't be able to read old journals, letters, and documents, and research will suffer. I mean, think of the professors that have written cursive, 70 years ago. Not only historical research, but scientific research of all kinds. If you can't read the cursive, you can't read these documents. There's some that maintain that you can just learn the cursive without being able to write it, that it's not too difficult to, in a few hours, just learn how to read cursive, and that's all you need to do. Would you comment on that?
I would actually ask whoever made that statement to show me the research that shows that a 5 or 6 year old can learn to read cursive in an hour. I just haven't seen it. Those of us in education, I mean, I guess you could teach them to recognize that two different letter forms together represented the same symbol, but in the process of learning to read, you're generally teaching a child the print or the manuscript letter, the block letter, as you're teaching them the sound and the symbol in the reading program that they're working through. I have not seen, and I don't know that I personally have encountered children who have learned to read cursive without practicing the letters as they've learned to read it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mrs. Wright. Oh, I'm sorry. One more question. Representative Nielsen.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jackie, there are other civilizations and cultures such as Chinese, and we had the Chinese folks here the other day, but their writing is all block. How do they overcome this? Is it an impediment to them to be able to do what we can do with cursive, or how do they overcome that, or is there really a problem there?
I don't see that. I think that in the Chinese, in my understanding of the Chinese alphabet, is that the characters frequently one character might resemble on a complete thought or a complete concept versus just one letter. Like we create one letter at a time. No, I don't see that. I do know that what I have heard from teachers who have students who are ELL or ESL students is that cursive writing, especially when you hit the intermediate grades, helps the students focus on the words and the spelling and the grammar when they're coming from another country that isn't an English-speaking country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Wright. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ronna Lee Linsman.
Well, and members of the committee, Representative Bateman, I was especially glad to have this opportunity. My name is Ronna Lee Linsenman, Linsenmann, and I am a mother advocate, and I have been. My youngest child is like 24 years old now, so I've been around the block for a day or two. And so when I spoke the other day, it comes from a place of long-standing involvement. And I emailed all of you some of the good research that I had available on the internet. So I won't go over a lot of that, but I will let you know that because of my interest in penmanship, and this goes clear back to when I was a child, as an adult, I did become a certified graphoanalyst. And you know, in the court system, when they are going after the legal documents and the forgeries, that they can determine who has actually written that. We see the symbol on the page, and someone can try to copy that, but professionals can still determine that that was not written by the same hand, because as the speakers before said, it is brain writing. It is not handwriting. It is about honing the mind and training our brain I do want to make comment. I know teachers are hard-pressed for all of the social issues they have to face, and I would say we need to diminish a little of the responsibility on some of those issues and focus on more of the academic issues. When I asked the third grade teacher when my children were there, I am adamant about penmanship, and I want my children to continue doing all assignments in cursive. The teacher replied to me, "I'm sorry, but I'm not going to support you in that because it hinders me in checking their work, because their young penmanship is hard to decipher, and I'm not going to spend my time doing it." That's literally what she told me right to my face. So I insisted with my children at home, still being the parent advocate, but I was sorely disappointed. If you're golfers, if you're musicians or athletes, you know you have to train the techniques that make you better at your skill. And I would submit to you that a lot of the problem with penmanship, as I observed my children in grade school, the teachers no longer focus on the proper way to hold the pencil. And if a child mutates to some other method that strains the hand and makes them weary when they're writing, they're not taught to follow the flow, to use their whole arm, to move with the page. It is an extreme drudge, and it does cause hand cramps, I suppose, because they are not they're not taught in the proper techniques. And I also would like to mention to Representative Wills, when he was asking about the composition and the grammar, I also had the experience, because language, we do have to recognize the brain is, we're either, we love math or we are linguists. And the two have a hard time. Math is not my big deal, but language I can deal with very well. And in our public school system, we're trying to mush up the two of them to the point where the mathematicians can't excel and the linguist can't excel, because we're trying to make them so good at both of them. We don't allow them to be better in one or the other, and I find that a problem too. But in the whole thing of language and composition, I also had the experience of trying to get my daughter transferred to an academic language class in high school, because the class my daughter was in was just all a lot of, I thought, psychobabble. So I went to the counselor, I went and inquired about getting her changed to the academic teacher, and he had no problem with it. But the principal came in, and we did get into a little bit of a heated argument, and he literally asked me, "Why do you want your child to diagram a sentence? Why do you want her to know what a prepositional phrase is after all? It's like a waste of time." I don't agree. I think that when we're working with language, that bringing back the diagramming sentences would be wonderful too. So having said all that, I do just want to encourage you, if you didn't have time to read the email that I sent, that you do look at that, because it is just encouraging and supporting, of course, the professionals that already spoke. It's exactly what they said. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron Lee. Questions? Representative Bateman.
Just one. Thank you, Mr. Ron Lee. Do you think people write thank you notes as often, say, in the last 10 years as they did in earlier times? Are we getting as many thank you notes?
Excuse me, Representative Chairman, it's a lost art. All you have to do is read the little advice columns in the newspaper or the women's magazines or anything anywhere, and the etiquette. And I would bring that as another point. When we talk about bullying in the school, we are losing these, what we deem as lesser skills, or these things that we really shouldn't worry about. We say, oh, they're so small, don't worry about it. I would suggest that if we cannot instruct and we cannot hold to the lesser of these of the etiquettes or of just common civility and politeness, you can't expect anybody to be civilized in the larger issues of bullying.